All right, welcome back. We are on part 2 of The Frog Prince. When we left in our story last, the little girl had lost her ball, her little golden ball, down in the well. She met the icky frog, and the frog said that he would go down and get it for her, but she's got to be his friend. She's got to love him and let him do everything that she does. And she agreed to it, but then she was like, yeah, not going to happen. She got her ball back. She took off. So then the frog comes to the palace and knocks on the door, and she closes the door in his face again. Then her father said, we keep our promises. Go let him in. You have to do what you promised. So now that's where we're at. Now let's go over our vocabulary words real quick. Contented, happy, and satisfied. The baby gave a contented sigh as she fell asleep on her mother's shoulder. Disgusting. Unpleasant and gross. Chris had not cleaned his room for days, and it was very disgusting. Enchantment, the state of being enchanted or under a spell. In Sleeping Beauty, the entire castle was under an enchantment. Glared, stared at something or someone angrily. Ashley glared at her brother when he entered her room without knocking. Sometimes I give my boys the mom glare. Scold, to correct someone angrily because they did something wrong. Whenever the children ran in the house with muddy shoes, their father would scold them. All right, so now I want you to think about what we've learned so far in The Frog Prince. Now, what do you think is going to happen in the rest of the story? I want you to make that prediction. What's going to happen in the rest of the story? And now I want you to listen to see if your prediction comes true. So let's share. Here we go. All right. Excuse me. All right, so now here we are. The princess is letting the frog into the castle. So here we go. Unwillingly, the princess allowed the frog in the magnificent palace. He bounced up and down as frogs will when they are very happy, but she only glared at him dreadfully. So she gave him an angry look. Why do you think she's giving him the angry look? She doesn't want to be its friend, does she? Oh, so she's mad that she has to do this now. She thought to herself, why should I have to keep my promise to this old croaker just because he fetched my ball from the well? Her father insisted, however, that she should be his friend just as she said she would. The frog hopped after her into the great dining hall, boing, boing, and immediately jumped onto the table. So, princess, he said, we shall be the best of friends now. With a contented croak, he began to eat from her shining gold plate and sparkling silver bowl. So he's pretty happy. You can see from the picture, he's pretty happy now. Hey, we're going to be friends. Now I get to eat and do all the things you do. So do you think she's still happy? Look at her face. She didn't look thrilled at all, does she? Frogs do not eat very neatly, I'm afraid, and the princess, noticing how he smeared the food all over his face, turned away in disgust. She refused to look at the frog or speak to him, but she still felt sick just thinking of such an ugly creature eating with her. So how would you feel if the frog was eating with your table? Not sure that I'd like a frog sitting at my table, but maybe if he learned some manners, we might get along. What a lovely golden plate, the frog remarked. It reminds me of your ball. You have such beautiful possessions. So what is possessions? It's things you own. It will be nice to be a princess and have everything. It must be nice to be a princess and have everything. If I had everything I wanted, the princess retorted, you would not be eating with me. So retorted means to give a really sharp response. So she was very snappy and was not very nice to him. So when she said, you would not be eating with me. The frog ignored her rudeness. May I have a drink from your cup? He asked politely. The princess was about to refuse, but her father caught her eye, and so she nodded. So she just like, fine, whatever, let's do this. The frog drank thirstily. Perhaps it was because of that long hop from the well to the palace doors. Would you like to drink now, Princess?" he asked, nudging the cub back in her direction. "You must be joking," she snapped. "Princesses do not drink after yucky frogs." The frog sighed and continued eating, but soon he began to look sleepy. "I'm tired, Princess," he said. "Will you take me up to bed?" Do you think the princess is going to agree to let her sleep in her room? She doesn't look like she's going to agree to it, but I guess we'll see. "I could never have such a slimy frog in my bed," the princess burst out. Her father was about to scold her, but the frog beat him to it. "Oh, careful, careful, Princess Fair. Promises are more than air." So what do you think the frog means when he says promises are more than air? Let's keep reading and see if we can find out. What could the princess do? She had promised. So she ran up the stairs to her bedroom, and all the way up she could hear the frog hopping behind her, boing, boing, and leaving little muddy footprints, splish, splish, on the castle floor. She opened the door to her bedroom. The beautiful princess and the ugly frog stood in the doorway looking at the princess's lovely room, hung with silk curtains, beautiful paintings, and jeweled lamps. A thick, soft goose feather quilt lay across her cozy bed, and a full, plump pillow waited to support the princess's pretty head. Trying to get it to where you guys can see her and the frog. Okay, there we go. The princess left the frog at the door and climbed into her beautiful bed. She wished the frog would go away, but he sat on the floor looking up at her. "I want to sleep on your pillow," the frog said decidedly. So do you think she's going to let him sleep on her pillow? Probably not from the he's acting so far. She didn't want him in her room. She didn't want him at the table. She didn't even want him in the palace. So I don't know that she's going to let him on the pillow. The princess shook her head. "No, please. You can sleep anywhere you want, just not on my bed. Please. You are just too disgusting. And you will leave slime on the pillow." "I want the pillow," the frog insisted. "You promised you would share everything with me." The princess pleaded and cried, but nothing could change the frog's mind. "You promised," he said, "and promises are more than air." Finally, she had to give. Frustrated, she climbed down and tossed the frog roughly onto the pillow, and then climbed back into the bed herself. She tried to keep as far away from her new friend as possible. "I wish you'd just go away," she hissed into the darkness. The frog was silent for a long minute, and then he whispered, "Princess, there's one more thing." The princess groaned. "Ugh. Could I have a good night kiss? I have been a very lonely frog, and you did promise you would love me." You think she's gonna give him a kiss? Miss Nicholson said, "Nope." I mean, so far, I'm really reluctant to give him anything he's asked for, but he usually does what he wants. So, I don't know. Let's keep reading and see. The princess was so exhausted that she did not even bother to argue. In the dark, she rolled over and planted one kiss on the top of the frog's cold, wet head. "Now, please go to sleep," she begged. "Good night," croaked the frog. The next morning, the princess woke to find the frog still snoring on the pillow. The princess watched him sleeping for some time. She began to feel impatient for him to wake up, for she found that gross as he was, she preferred arguing with the frog to playing by herself. So impatient means that she doesn't like him. It was so quiet without him croaking away. Finally, she poked him hard with her finger. "Get up, you lazy toad," she said. So is she changing how she's feeling about the frog? The night before, she didn't even want him in the house. And now she's like, "Well, I kind of like having him here because I don't like playing by myself." So she wakes him up. The frog did not stir. So with the palm of her hand, she gave him a rough shove and sent him sliding off the pillow into the cold stone floor of her bedroom. The moment his little webbed feet touched the ground, however, the warty frog disappeared, and in place sat a little prince, rubbing his eyes sleepily and smiling up at the princess. Well, how do you think she's feeling now that she doesn't see a frog? She sees a prince. I mean, I'd be a little shocked. Hello, princess. Thank you so much for keeping your promise. Who are you? She asked, very much surprised. Why, I'm the frog, he responded. A wicked witch living in the forest turned me into an ugly frog, and only you could save me. I knew that your heart was just as golden as your plate and your ball, and I was right. So, what do you think he meant when he said her heart was as golden as her plate and the ball? It meant that she had a good heart. Now I am free of her spell. He looked at her. Thank you, princess. Now I will leave you alone and go back to my home on the other side of the forest. Wait, said the princess. I thought we were supposed to be friends forever after. And promises are more than air, you know. The prince laughed. So they are. Shall we go play with your ball? And together they ran down the stairs and out into the bright golden sunshine. They were friends forever afterwards, and when they were quite grown up, they were married with great celebration and joy. They invited the entire kingdom to their wedding, not to mention a number of frogs that the prince had met during his long enchantment. We've already learned that the word enchantment means somebody's under a magical spell, like a witch's spell. But they lived happily ever after, of course, and the princess was always glad that she had kept her promise. All right, so let's talk about what we just read. Okay, so first of all, did your prediction come true? Were you right about where the story was headed? If you were, nice job. All right, when the princess is being mean to the frog by glaring at him and saying awful things, the frog says, "Oh, careful, careful, Princess Fair. Promises are more than air." What does the frog mean? A promise is a promise, and it's important to be true to your word. Do you think the princess's father would agree with this saying? Yeah, because he always said, we keep our promises. So he made her keep the promise. What is the first thing the frog wants to do when he comes to the palace? He wants to eat at the table with her, doesn't he? So how does that go? The frog's happy, but the princess was disgusted. What's the next thing the frog wants to do? Let's go sleep in the princess's bed. How does that go? She agrees. She wasn't happy about it, but she agreed. She didn't want him in the bed, but she finally says, all right, fine. And she threw him up on the bed, didn't she? All right, what was the final thing that the frog wanted before going to sleep? A kiss. And how does that go? Well, she agreed. She said she was too tired to argue with him. So she just leaned over, gave him a kiss on the head, didn't she? And what happened? Turned into a prince the next morning, didn't she? All right, do you think the frog is taking advantage of the princess's promise and her father's rule just to get what he wants? Maybe, but it ends up working out in the end, doesn't it? All right, and the frog slides off the pillow and lands on the floor. What happened to him? He turned into a prince, and he's no longer under the witch's enchantment. All right, did this fairy tale have a happily ever after? Yes, it did. And we know that because the prince and the princess became friends and eventually got married. All right, what part of the fairy tale could really happen? Well, we know the ball could fall in. There really could be a king and a princess living in a castle. And a little girl could really meet a frog. Like she could find a frog in the woods. What part is fantasy? Well, frogs don't talk. And do frogs turn into princes? No. All right, friends, go into Google Classroom. Make sure you answer all your questions in there and then turn it into me. And I will see you guys on our next lesson. Goodbye, friends.